Adelina Marris vanished into the night. Rowan Hale followed the trail of shadows. Cyra Loxley hid secrets behind a mask of grief. Lennox Drevar let obsession twist into rage, and Malrik Veynar stood calmly at the edge of suspicion. Together, their names shaped a story of betrayal, fire, and a murder no one saw coming. Adelina Marris had always been the type of student who preferred quiet corners of the campus to noisy gatherings. She was focused on her studies in criminology, often spending long hours in the library, surrounded by stacks of books and neatly highlighted notes. On the surface, she lived a simple life, one that did not attract much attention. But sometimes it is the quietest lives that hold the deepest mysteries. On the evening she vanished, nothing seemed unusual at first. She left the Greenridge University Library shortly before closing, carrying her laptop bag and a paperback novel tucked under her arm. The night was calm, with the hum of streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. Students passed her by, some heading back to dorms, others preparing for late-night coffee runs, but nobody noticed anything strange about her departure. Adelina's phone went dark just after 9:50. She had texted her roommate earlier in the evening saying she would be back soon, but she never arrived. By the next morning, her absence raised immediate concern. Friends described her as punctual, predictable, and not the kind of person who would disappear without a word. Her roommate, Cyra Loxley, reported her missing after realizing Adelina's bed had not been slept in. Within hours, flyers were printed with her photo, showing her warm smile and calm eyes, and students spread the word across campus. The university atmosphere shifted quickly from routine to restless. Greenridge had never been the site of a major crime, and the community clung to hope that Adelina would return safely. Local news outlets picked up the story, and social media filled with speculation. Some believed she had chosen to leave on her own, while others insisted something sinister had occurred. Her parents arrived from out of state, pleading for information, their grief visible as cameras captured them standing in front of the police station. Detective Rowan Hale, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for piecing together complicated cases, was assigned to lead the search. He started with the library, reviewing hours of surveillance footage. Adelina was seen leaving through the side exit, adjusting the strap of her bag before walking toward the parking lot. The footage ended there. Strangely, no cameras captured her beyond that point. The lot was poorly lit, and the last glimpse of her showed nothing out of the ordinary. Her car remained in the same space it had occupied all week, keys inside her dorm room. That detail alone made her disappearance even more alarming. Police organized searches of the surrounding neighborhoods, checking abandoned buildings and wooded trails. Cadaver dogs were brought in but picked up no immediate scent. Students volunteered to form search parties, combing through fields and creek beds, calling her name in the fading light of evening. Each night, hope dwindled further. Rumors began to spread about a stalker who had been seen near campus weeks earlier, and whispers of Adelina being followed reached the investigators' ears. Her professors were questioned. They described her as intelligent, reserved, and ambitious, never one to cause trouble. Friends painted the picture of someone who was cautious, someone unlikely to take risks or wander into unsafe areas. Yet the deeper the detectives dug, the more puzzling her disappearance became. It was as if the ground had swallowed her whole between the short distance from the library to her dorm. What unsettled the investigators most was the timeline. Adelina had only a window of 15 minutes where she was unaccounted for before her phone powered down. This suggested intention, either by her or someone else. Forensic teams examined her belongings in her dorm, but found no signs of struggle, no hidden notes, no evidence of her planning to run away. Her computer showed normal activity, with her last document saved just hours before she left for the library. Detective Hale considered all possibilities, but each path seemed to circle back to the same question. How could a young woman vanish in a place so familiar, in a community that prided itself on safety? Pressure mounted from the public as days passed without answer. Candlelight vigils were held on campus, where classmates gathered to pray and hold photographs of Adelina, their faces lit by flickering flames. The image of her smile became a haunting reminder of the uncertainty that gripped the town. The silence surrounding her disappearance felt heavy, almost unnatural, as if something was being hidden just out of sight. And though no one realized it yet, the search for Adelina was about to uncover something far darker than anyone could have imagined. 3 days after Adelina's disappearance, the search took a tragic turn. On a chilly Monday morning, 2 hikers were following a narrow trail deep in hollow pine woods, a stretch of forest miles away from Greenridge University. They had set out early, carrying backpacks and water bottles, expecting nothing more than a quiet day surrounded by trees and silence. What they stumbled upon instead would shake the entire community. Just off the trail, in a clearing blackened by recent fire, lay the remains of a body. The smell of burned earth still lingered in the air, and smoke-stained branches reached outward like skeletal fingers. The hikers froze at the sight before calling authorities, their voices trembling as they described what they had seen. When investigators arrived, the scene was grim. The fire had consumed most of the body, leaving little recognizable detail. Forensic teams carefully moved through the clearing, documenting every inch of scorched ground. Charred branches and ashes covered the earth, and beneath the layers of soot, a few fragments of personal belongings were uncovered. Among the ruins lay a silver star-shaped necklace, partially blackened but still intact enough to be identified. Detectives photographed it and placed it into an evidence bag, knowing it might be the only clue to who the victim was. Back at the station, Adelina's parents were shown the necklace. Their reaction was immediate and heart-wrenching. They confirmed it had belonged to their daughter, a gift she had worn since high school. The discovery shifted the investigation from a search for a missing person to the pursuit of justice in a homicide case. The hope that Adelina might return alive was shattered, replaced by the chilling reality that someone had not only taken her life, but attempted to destroy every trace of her existence. The medical examiner's office worked tirelessly on the remains, piecing together what little could be recovered. Despite the fire's devastation, the body revealed critical information. Adelina had suffered fatal injuries before the flames consumed her, evidence that the fire was meant to cover up the crime rather than cause it. Though much of her body was destroyed, traces of blunt force trauma were visible on her skull, and fragments of fabric clung to her bones, indicating she had been fully clothed when she died. The official report confirmed what detectives had suspected. Adelina's death was deliberate, and the burning of her body was an attempt to erase the truth. News of the discovery spread rapidly. Candlelight vigils turned into memorial gatherings, and students mourned openly on campus lawn. Photographs of Adelina smiling at school events were shown alongside images of hollow pine woods, the contrast between her vibrant life and the charred crime scene impossible to ignore. Reporters crowded outside the police station, pressing investigators for updates, while community members demanded answers. The tragedy had pierced the town's sense of security, and whispers of fear spread among students who wondered if a killer walked among them. Detective Rowan Hale focused on the details left behind. The location of the body was suspicious. Hollow Pine Woods was not a place someone could stumble upon easily. It was secluded, accessible only by dirt paths that few outsiders knew. Whoever placed Adelina there had knowledge of the area, and confidence that it would not be interrupted. This suggested the killer either lived nearby or had scouted the woods beforehand. The partially buried gas can found close to the clearing added to the puzzle. Though fingerprints had been burned away by the flames, the fact it had been left behind at all hinted at carelessness or panic. Investigators worked backward from the woods to the university, tracing possible routes a killer could have taken. Roadblocks were set up to question drivers seen near Hollow Pine on the night of Adelina's disappearance, but few useful leads emerged. The distance between the library parking lot, where she was last seen, and the woods where her body was found raised disturbing questions. How had Adelina been transported? Did someone lure her willingly into a vehicle, or had she been forced? And most importantly, why had she been targeted at all? The discovery of her remains only deepened the mystery. Nothing had been stolen from her. Her necklace, though damaged, remained. This ruled out robbery as a motive. The brutality of the crime pointed toward anger, jealousy, or obsession. Detectives began to circle around the people closest to Adelina, starting with those who might have known her routines, those who could predict where she would be and when. The forest had hidden her remains for only a few days, but the secrets it concealed threatened to unravel lives. And for Rowan Hale, the case was no longer about finding a missing student. It was about chasing down the shadow of a killer who had gone to great lengths to hide what he had done, yet still left behind just enough evidence to be hunted. As the investigation pressed forward, attention turned to the people who had been closest to Adelina in her daily life. Detectives understood that in many homicide cases, the perpetrator was often someone known to the victim, someone who moved unnoticed within their circle, until their hidden motives came to light. With the body now identified and the woods secured, investigators began piecing together the fragments of Adelina's final days. The first person to be questioned thoroughly was her roommate, Cyra Loxley. She had been the one to report Adelina missing when she failed to return to their dorm. On the surface, Cyra appeared distraught, speaking tearfully about the loss of her friend. Yet beneath her grief, there were small details that unsettled investigators. Cyra admitted that Adelina had been growing increasingly anxious in the weeks before she vanished. According to her, Adelina mentioned feeling watched on campus, convinced someone was following her between classes and back to her room. Cyra had dismissed it at the time, thinking it was stress or paranoia, but now the confession seemed like a critical warning that had gone unheeded. Detectives then turned their focus to another figure, Lennox Drevar, a fellow student with a reputation for being persistent to the point of unsettling. He had been seen in the library on the night Adelina disappeared, though his version of events left. Lennox admitted he had liked Adelina for months, but claimed she never showed the same interest. When pressed about his whereabouts during the time Adelina vanished, his story wavered. He insisted he had gone back to his dorm, yet no one remembered seeing him. Worse still, a search of his social media revealed troubling patterns. Dozens of posts and private messages directed at Adelina, some flattering, others bitter when she did not respond. The combination painted him as a potential stalker, someone whose obsession could have escalated into violence. Still, Lennox was not the only person of interest. Investigators discovered another connection hidden in plain sight. Among Adelina's professors, one name surfaced repeatedly in her academic records: Dr. Malrik Veynar, a charismatic figure with a sharp intellect and commanding presence. At first his involvement seemed purely professional, but late-night email exchanges between Adelina and Dr. Veynar raised questions. The tone of his responses appeared unusually personal, bordering on familiarity beyond the typical student-teacher relationship. Detectives considered the possibility that Adelina had confided in him about her fears, or perhaps shared more than academic discussions. When questioned, Dr. Veynar remained calm, denying any impropriety, but his composure felt rehearsed. For Rowan Hale, this calmness was not necessarily a sign of innocence. Sometimes the most dangerous suspects were the ones who knew exactly how to conceal their emotions. The suspicion only grew heavier as investigators dug deeper into Adelina's life. Cyra, the roommate, admitted she had noticed a growing tension between Adelina and someone unknown in recent weeks. She described moments when Adelina would check over her shoulder walking across campus, or quickly shut her laptop when Cyra entered the room. Yet Cyra herself could not be ruled out. Detectives learned she and Adelina had a strained friendship, with cycles of closeness and jealousy. Resentment over Adelina's academic achievements and popularity may have simmered beneath the surface. As Rowan Hale organized the threads, he realized each suspect carried a different potential motive. Cyra had jealousy and possible resentment. Lennox had obsession and rejection. Dr. Veynar had secrecy and a connection that could cross professional lines. Each was plausible, each dangerous in their own way, and all three had access to Adelina's world. Theories began to take shape. Perhaps Lennox had lured Adelina from the library under false pretenses, or maybe Cyra had orchestrated a meeting under the guise of friendship. The emails with Dr. Veynar suggested the possibility of a relationship Adelina wanted to end, something that might provoke anger. The overlapping lines blurred, making it impossible to tell where one suspicion ended and another began. Detectives expanded their interviews, pulling in classmates who might have witnessed subtle tensions. One remembered seeing Lennox lingering near Adelina's dorm weeks earlier. Another recalled a heated discussion between Adelina and Cyra in the cafeteria, and one student quietly mentioned seeing Adelina meet with Dr. Veynar off campus, a detail that added a darker layer to the professor's role. Forensic evidence from the woods began to arrive in the lab. Tire tracks suggested a vehicle had been used to transport Adelina's body, and while no matches had yet been confirmed, investigators prepared to compare them against known suspects. The accelerant residue found in the clearing hinted at planning, not impulse, meaning whoever killed her had thought about how to erase the evidence long before the fire was set. This narrowed the pool of suspects further, focusing attention on those with the composure and determination to stage such an elaborate crime. As each day passed, the case widened like a spreading net, but within it, the lives of Adelina's roommate, her fellow student, and her professor were caught in the spotlight. The question haunting Rowan Hale was no longer whether Adelina had been murdered by someone close to her, but which of these familiar faces had hidden the capacity for such cruelty behind a mask of normalcy. Detective Rowan Hale knew the case hinged on evidence. Suspicions alone were not enough to bring a killer to justice. While the interviews revealed troubling motives, Hale needed something concrete, something physical that could connect Adelina's final moments to one of the suspects. With the burned clearing in Hollow Pine Woods secured, forensic teams scoured the area for overlooked details. It was during a second sweep that a crucial find emerged: a dented metal gas can partially buried beneath layers of ash and soil. The flames had consumed its surface, erasing fingerprints, but its presence spoke volumes. Whoever killed Adelina had planned to burn her body, and this can had been the instrument. Attention then shifted to the ground itself. Tire tracks led away from the site, faint impressions in the dirt, preserved by chance under a fallen branch. Specialists cast molds of the tread, later confirming the tracks belonged to a mid-sized sedan. The pattern was distinctive, narrow in the grooves, the kind often seen on older models. Hale requested records of vehicles owned by those under suspicion. When Lennox Drevar's name appeared with a registered sedan matching the tread type, it seemed like the break investigators had been waiting for. A warrant allowed police to seize Lennox's car. At first glance it appeared ordinary, dusty, a few discarded papers in the back seat, nothing overtly incriminating. But beneath the liner of the trunk, investigators found faint traces of a chemical accelerant. Samples were rushed to the lab, where analysis confirmed they matched the accelerant residue collected at the crime scene. For Hale, it felt like the puzzle pieces were finally locking into place. The evidence tied Lennox directly to the disposal of Adelina's body. Yet the case was not as simple as it appeared. When confronted with the findings, Lennox remained defiant. He denied harming Adelina, insisting the accelerant must have been planted or accidentally transferred. His words carried desperation, but his calmness wavered under pressure. Still, Hale's instincts cautioned against a straightforward conclusion. In his years of experience, he had seen seemingly airtight cases unravel when overlooked details came to light. And indeed, one such detail soon emerged. Lab technicians discovered something unexpected when testing the accelerant samples from Lennox's trunk. Among the residues, fragments of DNA were present. Initially, investigators believed it would confirm Adelina's presence in the vehicle. Instead, the DNA belonged to someone else entirely: Cyra Loxley, Adelina's roommate. The revelation shook the investigation. What reason would Cyra have for her DNA to appear in the trunk of Lennox's car, mixed with the very substance used to burn Adelina's body? Hale re-examined Cyra's earlier statements. She had positioned herself as the grieving roommate, the concerned friend who raised the alarm when Adelina went missing. Yet her name now surfaced in a place impossible to explain innocently. Detectives began to look closer at her relationship with Adelina. In interviews with classmates,
whispers of jealousy became louder. Students described Cyra as often overshadowed by Adelina's achievement. While Adelina thrived academically and socially, Cyra was frequently left in the background, frustrated at being compared to her. Tension, they said, had built slowly between them, masked by the surface appearance of friendship. The possibility of a conspiracy began to take shape. Could Cyra and Lennox have acted together? The idea fit disturbingly well. Cyra, resentful and envious, and Lennox, obsessed and rejected, might have found common ground in their bitterness toward Adelina. Working together, they could have lured her into a trap, Cyra gaining her trust, Lennox providing the means of disposal. The accelerant in Lennox's car, tainted with Cyra's DNA, suggested not only involvement, but coordination. Still, Hale resisted the urge to rush to conclusion. He considered another angle. Had Cyra planted evidence in Lennox's vehicle, attempting to frame him? The DNA was too direct, too intimate a link to dismiss as staged. If Cyra wanted to frame Lennox, she would not leave her own biological trace behind. This pointed more convincingly toward shared responsibility. The investigation expanded into their digital lives. Cyra's laptop revealed deleted searches about forest access roads and fire accelerants, partially recovered by forensic specialists. Lennox's phone history showed late-night calls to an unknown number, later traced back to a prepaid cell phone found in Cyra's possession. Piece by piece, a hidden alliance was surfacing, their secret connection threaded through evidence neither could fully erase. For Hale, the path forward was clear. He now had to unravel the extent of their collaboration and determine who had struck the fatal blow. The woods had yielded more than Adelina's burned remains. They had revealed the first undeniable trail, linking the killers to their victim. But as the picture sharpened, one chilling truth became apparent. Adelina had not fallen victim to a random act of violence. She had been deliberately targeted, betrayed not just by one person, but by two who moved within her closest circle. The line between friend and enemy had dissolved, leaving a betrayal more haunting than any stranger's crime. The moment Cyra Loxley's DNA surfaced in the accelerant residue, the investigation shifted into a new phase. Detective Rowan Hale knew the truth was within reach, but he also understood that human motives are rarely simple. What drove two young people, both connected to Adelina, to commit such a brutal crime? To answer that, he and his team had to dismantle the fragile masks Cyra and Lennox had worn, piece by piece, until the hidden core of their conspiracy was revealed. Cyra was brought in for questioning once more. Her composure was far thinner this time. When confronted with the DNA evidence, her carefully maintained image of innocence cracked. She admitted to meeting Adelina on the night she disappeared, leading her from the library under the pretense of needing to talk privately. Adelina, trusting her roommate, followed without hesitation. But what Cyra left unsaid at first was that Lennox was waiting nearby. The trap had been laid, and Adelina walked directly into it. Eventually, under mounting pressure, Cyra revealed the toxic partnership that had formed between her and Lennox. Their alliance was born out of resentment and obsession, emotions that spiraled together into something lethal. Cyra's envy had grown steadily over the years. Living in Adelina's shadow left her bitter, every success of her roommate a reminder of her own shortcomings. Lennox's obsession with Adelina had twisted into rage when she ignored his advances. Together, Cyra and Lennox found validation in each other's frustrations, convincing themselves that Adelina's absence would solve their problem. What began as whispered complaints turned into dark plans, and those plans turned into murder. The night of Adelina's death unfolded with chilling precision. Cyra distracted her with talk of needing help, drawing her out toward the edge of campus, where Lennox's car was parked. Once inside the vehicle, Adelina's unease grew, but before she could act, the situation turned violent. Forensic analysis of her remains indicated blunt force trauma, consistent with the theory that Lennox attacked her. Cyra, though not the one to strike the fatal blow, stood complicit in the act, her betrayal cutting as deep as any physical wound. Together, they transported her lifeless body to Hollow Pine Woods, carrying with them the gas can that would become their undoing. At trial, the prosecution painted a vivid portrait of their crime. The evidence was overwhelming: the gas can, the accelerant in Lennox's trunk, Cyra's DNA, and the digital trail connecting them both. Jurors listened as forensic specialists explained how the accelerant residue matched perfectly between the woods and the car. Computer experts testified about Cyra's deleted searches and the secret phone linking her and Lennox. The story that emerged was not of a random tragedy but of a calculated betrayal by two people Adelina should have been able to trust. Cyra attempted to shift blame onto Lennox, portraying herself as a bystander, swept into his obsession. She insisted she had never intended for Adelina to die, that her role was smaller than the evidence suggested. Lennox in turn accused Cyra of manipulation, claiming she fueled his anger and pushed him toward violence. Their defense teams attacked each other, each trying to separate their client from the worst of the crime. But the evidence bound them together too tightly to sever. Their alliance in guilt was as undeniable as it had been in planning. The verdict brought closure to the case, though never to the grief it caused. Both Cyra and Lennox were found guilty of murder and conspiracy, sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As they were led away in shackles, the courtroom filled with a heavy silence. Adelina's parents, though heartbroken, expressed relief that justice had been served. For the community of Greenridge, the trial confirmed what many had feared, that evil does not always come from strangers lurking in the shadows, but sometimes from those who sit across from us at dinner tables or share the same roof. In the aftermath, Greenridge University built a memorial in Adelina's honor, a quiet garden, with a plaque engraved with her name. Students visited often, leaving flowers and notes beneath the silver star etched in stone, a reflection of the necklace that had survived when so much else was destroyed. Detective Rowan Hale closed the file with a lingering unease, aware that while the killers had been caught, the deeper truth of why such cruelty could emerge in the young remained unanswered. Adelina's story became a haunting reminder that beneath the calm surface of ordinary life, darkness can fester unnoticed, waiting for the moment it can no longer be concealed.